أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الأطيبين الأنجبين بهم نتولى ومن أعدائهم نتبرأ إلى الله اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. It is Surat al-Hujurat and the 4th ayah. إن الذين ينادونك من وراء الحجرات أكثرهم لا يعقلون ولو أنهم صبروا حتى تخرج إليهم لكان خيرا لهم والله غفور رحيم. It was mentioned that Hujurat, it is the plural of Hujra, meaning rooms, chambers, apartments, and it is regarding the chambers, the apartments of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the etiquettes and adab to be observed by the Muslims when they come in contact with the Prophet, with the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, with the Imams, how the interaction has to be, obedience towards them, submitting towards their command, and what are the etiquettes to be observed in all walks of life pertaining to the leaders of the community. Now here in this ayah says that إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يُنَادُونَكَ مِنْ وَرَاءِ الْحُجُرَاتِ, as for those who call you from behind the rooms, behind the apartments, أَكْثَرُهُمْ لَا يَعْقِلُونَ, most of them, they do not understand, they do not apply reason. وَلَوْ أَنَّهُمْ صَبَرُوا حَتَّى تَخْرُجَ إِلَيْهِمْ لَكَانَ خَيْرًا لَهُمْ. And then says, if they waited until you came out, لَكَانَ خَيْرًا لَهُمْ, it would have been better for them. Because what they did was, they used to stand outside the house of Rasulullah and call out loud with disrespect to the Prophet for him to come out of the apartments, of the chambers. Wallahu ghafurur rahim. And then the Almighty says, if you wait for him to come out, that is better for you, that is better for them, and Allah, He is forgiving, merciful. Now, that what we understand from here is that although this calling or addressing from behind the apartments does not exist today, but it is a lesson that and a rule for everyone. For example, in Tafsir Ruhul Ma'ani, Ibn Abbas, among the companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and among the first of Mufassirin who has written the Tafsir, he is the first of them. He says that when he used to go to his Ustad's house, he never knocked at the door. He waited for the Ustad to come out. And when inquired as to why do you do that, he recited this ayah, وَلَوْ أَنَّهُمْ صَبَرُوا حَتَّى تَخْرُجَ إِلَيْهِمْ لَكَانَ خَيْرًا لَهُمْ. That is, if they were patient until he came out, or he came to them, it is better for them. لَكَانَ خَيْرًا لَهُمْ. Now, there are many of these ayat in Quran, like for example, تَبَّتْ يَدَا أَبِي لَهَبٍ وَتَبٍ. Now Abu Lahab, he doesn't exist today. Abu Lahab was during the time of Rasulullah, an arrogant an oppressor, an ill-mannered person. Now in this day and age, if he doesn't exist, and at times if you say that may the hands of Abu Lahab be shackled, the meaning, it doesn't mean that it's that very Abu Lahab who was the person at the time of Rasulullah. Abu Lahab, it is that thought, that ideology, that mentality of kibr, of arrogance that existed then in the form of that person. That same mentality exists today. So if we say that, it means shackled be the hands of those who torture humanity, who terrorize Muslims, who terrorize those who are oppressed. So tabbat yada abi lahabin wa tab means that thought, that is as such, may that thought be shackled. Then it was in the form of that person Abu Lahab, now it may be his following. The same way, the rules that are mentioned over here are that لو أنهم sabaru, when it says in this ayah, if people were patient until the Prophet he comes to them, that is better for them. So the Prophet doesn't exist today, but that is the etiquette that you observe for the leaders of the community. When the Imam returns, also you do the same. For anyone high in command, for anyone, generally that is the rule that has to be observed. Now, Hujurat, that is the chambers, the apartments in which Rasulullah and his wives were living, there were 9 rooms made of palm leaves. And on the entrance of each room, there was a woolen curtain made of sheep wool, and the length about 5 meters by 4 meters. And these apartments, they existed until the time of Walid bin Abdul Malik. And the day when they destroyed these rooms, these chambers, or these dwelling places of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Medina was in aza, in mourning. And Sa'id bin Musayyib says that I wanted that simple lifestyle, and everyone at that time in Medina, they wanted that simple lifestyle, that dwelling place of Rasulullah to remain forever, which is a lesson, which would have been a lesson for the world. And 1,400 years is nothing, it's just recent past. When you look back into these great wonders that we have in this world, for example, the Great Wall of China, the life of this Great Wall of China, it's 3,000 years. They started building it from the time of Prophet Isa alayhi salam. I've seen it, I've been there, and it's beautiful. 3,000 years, and they had, and it's that monument is there. It's a lesson for everyone. Now they've preserved the tools with which they made that great wall. The uniform that was given to the builders, the workers, that has been preserved. The nails, the plates that were used to hold these bricks and rocks, the wheelbarrows, and all those pulleys and tools that were used to bring these, to lift these boulders and rocks, everything has been saved. So 3,000 years, the Great Wall of China, it is, and it's huge, 5,000 kilometers long, and it exists. And the Islamic history, it's only 1400 years since Rasulullah. In England, if you go, you've got all these chapels and the Parliament building. That Parliament building also, it's about 1,100 years old. So roughly during the time, close to the time of Rasulullah, and that magnificent monument, that building stands. All those chapels are there, all these castles you see, or even one of these kings, the last bread that was baked for him, that is about 400 years ago, they have preserved even that bread that was baked for him for the last time, and he could not eat. So people, when they give importance to their history, and so that everything remains. Now the Parliament building in England, it's a listed building, and even the furniture or even the bags of those MPs who lived centuries ago, they have all saved it, because history is important and people learn from all of them. But it's sad that the Islamic history has been totally removed, destroyed, and that is by this Wahhabi lot, under the banner of shirk and kufr and all that nonsense. Everything has been removed. So these apartments of Rasulullah also, they existed, but then they destroyed it and no trace of it remains. Now that what we understand and the messages we get from these ayat are that the ranks of people, they have to be honored. Shouting from outside his house and calling the Prophet by his name, that is bad. That is what they used to do. And in the ayat that were recited before that, it was mentioned that if someone does go and yell and call and raise his voice over the voice of the Prophet, his actions will be lost. Now, they shouted from outside the house seeking, Allah says that if you want anything, you have to be respectful to the Prophet, and anything which is against the etiquettes and adab, that has to be abstained. In this ayah says yunadunaka, that is, they used to call the Prophet min wara al-hujurat, from outside the apartments. Now, by one action of the people, you don't call them insane and mad. Allah says wahum la ya'qilun. The act that is yelling and calling and addressing the Prophet from outside his dwelling place, that is because they don't understand. They are insane, they are mad. Now sometimes people due to their habit, they speak loud. That is why we are told not to talk loud. There is an ayah in Quran, it says inna ankar al-aswat la sawtul hamir. Ankar al-aswat, the most disturbing of all the voices, it is the braying of the donkey. No one likes it. Said when a person talks loud, it's like the braying of a donkey. So that is why we have to control our voices, not to be too loud, to be polite and respectful. Sometimes people, due to their habit, they spoke loud, and at times people, they intended to disrespect the Prophet. Those who spoke loud, they are different. And then Allah says aktharuhum la ya'qilun, most of them, they don't understand. Just like parents, at times they call their children informally, simple. Sometimes they have to shout at them. Generally they don't. Sometimes they have to be loud. Now this is different, and they don't intend to disrespect. But if someone is always loud, always yelling, always shouting, that is bad. Now shouting, calling out loud and addressing a divine leader as such is a sign of sanity. It says yunadunaka, those who call you like that, la ya'qilun, they don't understand. And they used to come and address the Prophet by his name, and loud in the streets. Now one more one message that we get from here is that one who has more aql is more well-mannered. Amirul Mu'mineen Ali alayhi salatu wassalam, he says that la aqla liman la adaba lah. Someone who doesn't have any manners has no aql. Now the other thing is that in this ayah it said that وَلَوْ أَنَّهُمْ صَبَرُوا حَتَّى تَخْرُجَ إِلَيْهِمْ, that is, if they waited until he came. This صَبَرُوا حَتَّى تَخْرُجَ, sabr is a sign of aql. So being patient means, someone who is very patient means he has aql, he understands, he has intellect. Now the schedule as to when the Prophet meets, it's entirely upon the Prophet. So you don't impose any timetable on the Prophet. It says hatta takhruj, whenever he comes out. Whenever he appears, whenever he emerges, whenever he comes to them, they can meet him. Not that they impose a time and they call the Prophet whenever he comes. Hatta takhruja ilayhim. So if the Imam alayhi salam has returned and his office is in Masjid Kufa, then we don't say. We wait until he appears himself. He comes out to the office, he comes out to the meeting area, and then we see him. Now, and then hatta takhruja ilayhim, one is not required to shout in the streets and call out loud to the Prophet. Now those who are ill-mannered, be educated, they have to train themselves with kindness, not to put off law annahum sabaru, that is not to tell them off. Patiently they wait. Law annahum sabaru, if they are patient until the Prophet appears, says wallahu ghafurur rahim, that Allah will also forgive you, He is merciful. So some of the adab about how we deal and interact with the Prophet and the leaders have been mentioned in this ayah. The next ayah states, Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu. This one is an important one and we need it in our everyday life. Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu. O you who have faith, O you who believe. In ja'akum fasiqun bin naba'in. If a vicious character, or now we'll use the term fasiq here. Fasiq and adil. These are the two terms we will need. Adil is someone who believes in God, who performs all the wajib, he refrains from every haram. This person is adil. Someone who believes in God doesn't perform all the wajibat. There are some wajibat that are lacking in him. Or sometimes, he openly sins. Some of the wajibat are not being done, or some of the harams are being done. So this person will be a fasiq. Adil is obedient and he is faithful. Fasiq is disobedient and he is faithful. So he has faith but is disobedient. So he is fasiq. That what is required and from every one of us is that we have to be adil. Every person has to be adil. Adil means just, but the definition of adala in fiqh and in these ayat of Quran, that is, in addition to being faithful, to being obedient to all the commands, wajibat and muharramat. Now, here says that in ja'akum fasiqun, that if a fasiq comes to you binaba'in, with some news, fatabayyanu, you have to verify that news. An tusibu qawman bijahalatin, lest you should visit harm on some people out of ignorance. So that you don't fall into any harm out of ignorance, so you have to verify that news that has come to you. فَتُصْبِحُوا عَلَى مَا فَعَلْتُمْ نَادِمِينَ. For what you have done, then you will regret. If you take the news without verifying what is the news, the source of news, whether it's true or false. Now this applies especially a lot in this day and age, when you get all of these messages on the social media, all the news channels, all the media industry that is working. We have to be extra vigilant over here. Do we take every piece of news from every source, from every channel, from every person, every individual? Quran says, Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu, O you who believe, you have to be vigilant. Don't take every news from everyone. And if a fasiq brings a piece of news to you, you have to verify it. That is, fasiq is a sinner. Now it isn't as such that fasiq, every news that he will give you, it is going to be a lie. No. A fasiq, he may sometimes give you some authentic news, and also he will give you news that is not true. So both true and false can be heard from him. So you have to verify that news. A lot of points are being mentioned in this ayah. The question is, in this verse, there is a command that we see that was mentioned here, says that Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu in ja'akum fasiqun binaba'in fatabayyanu, that if a fasiq brings you a piece of news, fatabayyanu, you have to verify it. And in the same surah, in ayah number 12, the Almighty, He says that spying in the affairs of people, that is forbidden. You cannot spy. You cannot go and dig and find some information about someone. That is not allowed. Over here says verify the news, and then there in the next ayah that we will come to, there says that you cannot spy on people. So can spying be forbidden and also investigation be obligatory? So it's two commands over here. Spying not allowed, verifying the news wajib. The answer is, where spying is forbidden, it is about the personal behavior of the people, which has nothing to do with the social life. But where it is obligatory that you have to investigate, it is in the matters that are pertaining and related to the society. And we want to take an action based on that matter. So if due to respect, and if we do not investigate the individual, a nation may be exposed to corruption and turmoil. So in such cases, you have to verify. But actions that are to do with the person, whether he is sinning, whether he is praying, whether he is drinking, whether he is committing haram, whether he is eating halal, that is his personal business. We have no right to get into that. But if that is something to do with the society and is going to have an impact on the society, there it's something else. So in personal matters, spying is forbidden. In matters related to any news wherein a fasiq is bringing into the community, like these channels and all these messages, and you have all these, you can say easily that majority of those who are sending these messages, they are fasiq. So you have to be vigilant and you have to verify these messages. Now, that what we learn from this ayah, very important lessons, and some of which are here being mentioned now. First of all, address everyone with respect. Says Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu, that is the command of Allah. When He talks to the believers, says, O you who believe, O you the believers, O the faithful. When He addresses the Prophet, He says, Ya ayyuhal rasul, O messenger, Ya ayyuhal nabi, Ya ayyuhal muddassir, Ya ayyuhal muzzammil. He addresses the Prophet as such. Now, the other thing that we learn from this ayah is that not all of the companions of the Prophet, they are adil. Now what you hear a lot nowadays, that the companions of the Prophet, whoever he is, they are all adil. Companions mean, ashab means someone who has seen the Prophet. So there are so many who've seen the Prophet. Now the rule of the thumb that they have, now this again it's from the Wahhabi lot, they say whoever was the Sahabi of the Prophet, was the companion of the Prophet, he is good, and all of them they are divine, all of them they are heavenly, all of them their word is sacred. That is what they say. Here what we understand, and is the message over here from this ayah, Not all of the companions of the Prophet were adil, no. Among them there were some who were fasiq, among them there were some who were hypocrites, munafiq. So here says that in ja'akum fasiqun, that is, if a fasiq comes to you, and there is nothing wrong with exposing and disregarding people whose work and whose task it causes fitna. Says in ja'akum fasiqun, if a fasiq comes to you. Now over here fasiq, it's Walid bin Aqaba. So he's bringing a news. Instructions are, if a fasiq brings a news, you have to verify that news. Now the other thing that we learn from this ayah is that Islam, it considers trust in the people as the principle of life. And the account of those who are immoral, those who are fasiq, that is evident. And it became clear to everyone that they are different to ordinary people. So here in ja'akum fasiqun, so when a fasiq comes to you, you verify. Now the cause of events are two things: efforts of a fasiq, that is, and the quick acceptance of the believers. Now in the community, you've got a fasiq, a sinner, a wrongdoer, or a disobedient person. His efforts, they are so aggressive and they are so strong that he just is busy bringing in all these different messages and news. And there are people who are simple people who accept whatever is said to them quickly. So that is also bad. What fasiq is doing, he's pumping all that information, and all these simple people, they are accepting whatever is being said and they are just forwarding and sending to others. So here the instructions of the Almighty are that, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O you who believe, in ja'akum fasiqun, that is, when a fasiq comes to you with a piece of news, verify it. Don't accept it quickly. Don't forward it quickly. Alright, not every news item needs to be researched, but it has to be something which is naba. Now here says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu in ja'akum fasiqun bin naba'in. Naba means something important, an important piece of news, or something which is useful. If someone brings to you an information and you don't know, so there you verify it, something which is important, something which is useful. Now faith, it is not compatible with accepting quickly and blindly. A mu'min has to be smart. O you who believe, fatabayyanu, verify it. And then says in this ayah that you shouldn't delay it. This verifying shouldn't be delayed. That is, I got this piece of information, I'm just waiting for a few days, and then I'll do it later. No. Says fatabayyanu. Fatabayyanu means quick. That is, you have to be quick in verifying what is this news, what is the source, why have they sent it now. So you have to be vigilant. Islamic society, it is subject to any news attack, and people also should be vigilant. And in ja'akum fasiqun binaba'in fatabayyanu. Now because sometimes the fasiq, he does tell the truth, so his words should not be denied all the time, but should be investigated and verified. Fatabayyanu. Now the cure for social corruption and all these abnormalities that you have, it is vigilance in the Islamic Ummah. That is why it says fatabayyanu, verify it. And by researching and investigating, we should warn the fasiq and not let them be the pivot of the Islamic society, and narrow the field. We have to narrow the field for them. فَتَبَيَّنُوا أَن تُصِيبُوا قَوْمًا. So here says, and فَتَبَيَّنُوا, you verify that piece of news, أَن تُصِيبُوا قَوْمًا. Now in the management, the incident must be remedied before it occurs. So first research, then take an action. فَتَبَيَّنُوا أَن تُصِيبُوا. Now knowing the philosophy of ahkam and the divine commandments, that also increases the motivation of the people to carry out their commands. And the philosophy of research and investigating, it's to avoid fitna in the community, in the society. That's why he says فَتَبَيَّنُوا أَن تُصِيبُوا, so that you verify the news, so that you don't fall in corruption and in fitna. And the purpose of this corrupt news agency is to create fitna and disrupt the security of the system. You see all these news channels, when they have a piece of news, and most of the time it's all false, and they just want the minds to be tuned with that news, they keep on repeating and repeating and repeating every few minutes and in different ways. That is how they control the minds of people. So here Quran says أَن تُصِيبُوا قَوْمًا بِجَهَالَةٍ. So they want to keep the minds of the nation in ignorance. So for that not to happen, so you have to hold on to that piece of news that has come to you, and you verify it there and then. أَن تُصِيبُوا قَوْمًا بِجَهَالَةٍ. So that system, that what they are playing is that they want to play with your mind and keep you in ignorance. Then the other message that we get from this ayah is that acting on an unverified report, it can lead to the destruction of a nation. أَن تُصِيبُوا قَوْمًا بِجَهَالَةٍ. The nation will be destroyed. Like most of these newses that they come up with, like the WMD, they came and they said, and they came and they invaded and destroyed, and then they said no, it was a fake news, it was a wrong report. So how they did, what they did, how they destroyed, says إِن جَاءَكُمْ فَاسِقٌ بِنَبَإٍ فَتَبَيَّنُوا أَن تُصِيبُوا قَوْمًا بِجَهَالَةٍ. So that ignorance has to be removed. Obeying God's commands will stop one from regretting. So if you want not to regret later that piece of news that has come to you, verify it before accepting it. So we should investigate so that we do not regret. فَتَبَيَّنُوا. And then the ayah says نَادِمِينَ. Nadimin means they will regret ultimately. And the end of an unthoughtful work is also regret. So beautiful ayah, and so much of information we get from here. And ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O you who believe, in ja'akum fasiqun binaba'in fatabayyanu. If a fasiq brings you some news, verify it. An tusibu qawman bijahalatin, lest you should visit harm on some people out of ignorance. فَتُصْبِحُوا عَلَى مَا فَعَلْتُمْ نَادِمِينَ. And then you will become regretful for what you have done. So not to regret, don't accept every piece of news that comes to you. Spying on mu'mineen is haram. Getting into the personal lives of mu'mineen is forbidden. And here, this also has been mentioned so many times. Now when you look into all of these ayat here, and also it was mentioned earlier, that especially when spouses, they want to get married, and then they say that, okay, tell me whatever you have done in the past, and I will tell you what I have done in the past, all the bad and the negative and the wrong, so that we have a fresh start and we trust one another, and we have told whatever is in us. That is not allowed. That is haram. That is destroying your own image, and that is forbidden. forbidden, because Allah has kept an honor, given an honor to a mu'min, both men and women, saying that this was the wrong that I did in my past, and he says I did this wrong in the past, or when even asking, that is haram, and then replying to what he has asked, that is also another haram. And all these are major sins, and we are not allowed to do that. If a sin was done that is between that person and the Almighty God, we have no right to dig and then get into the personal lives of any individual. That is spying, and inshallah we'll come to that as well later. وسبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم.